6:45 now, 1320 WILS. Out there in Oregon, you've got a group of folks now. They call themselves the Citizens for Constitutional Freedom. They've taken over a federal building there, and the question now becomes, what should the government do? How long does a standoff like this last? Let's talk to Dr. G.M. Cox. He's a law enforcement expert, the director of the Public Administration Master's Degree Program at Tarleton University, State University in Fort Worth, Texas, and he also spent many decades in law enforcement. Dr. G.M. Cox, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
Right away, you see a standoff and you think of Waco. First of all, the standoff with the Bundy family, I guess they in Nevada, they pulled it off last time. Well, what did you think of the resolution before, how the feds basically, it seems like, walked away from it?
I agree with you. I think what's happening now is you'll see the Bundy brothers, Ammon and Ryan, there are the two Bundys that are in actually Oregon. They were also present in 2014 when Cliven basically had a face down with the federal government, and the Bureau of Land Management basically backed up. And I think that process has emboldened them. Said, well, if it worked here, we'll do it up there. And how long before the other militias try it, or other groups such as Occupy and so on. But the difference between Occupy, they were doing public land like parks and stuff.
What do you do, though? I mean, if you have because these were, I think, empty buildings, basically. But they're breaking the law at this point, and they're not budging. What do you do as law enforcement? Do you just wait months even for this, or?
I don't see it going out months. I think the federal government, the state authorities, and local authorities are talking to each other. I'm sure they've already established communications with the group in the wildlife reserve buildings, and they're looking at how can we negotiate. Then they also have a measured response. They have a playbook, and that playbook's got, here's what we're going to try first. If that doesn't work, we're going to try something else. But what their ultimate goal is that they don't have to use force to remove those people from there. They don't want another Ruby Ridge. They don't want another Mount Carmel or even Fort Davis, Texas. So I think you're absolutely right. They want a measured approach that they can do without bullets. And they don't want Americans or people hurt on either side. But at the same time, they are very cognizant of the fact that other groups are watching what they're doing, or more importantly, what they're not doing.
But this group, it seems like, first of all, the media attention is something they want, but they want to point out their viewpoint about the government, that they're violating all kinds of different constitutional rights of ours. I mean, if the talking is not going to work, how do you get a group of armed men out of a building then?
That's again, I think what's going to happen is they've got a number of tactics they can use. For instance, they could cut the electricity, they could cut the water, they could make it very uncomfortable. It's very cold there. So, and of course, the occupiers say they're posturing by saying we are supplied for the long haul. Well, that's a very vague term. We don't know what the long haul is. No one does. But when one says they have enough food to last the winter, that's a speculative statement.
Is that too long to wait if they do?
I don't think they'll wait that long. I really don't. I think you're going to see resolution within weeks, maybe a month. I think that there's no rush. There's no one getting hurt. Those buildings are rarely used this time of year. So I think the federal government is saying, wait, the time is on our side, not their side. And, of course, on the other hand, you're absolutely right. They're breaking the law. And I think the federal government's going to have to call their hand. Somebody's going to be prosecuted for this. I believe they're probably going to go back and prosecute Mr. Father Bundy, because they've got no choice at this point. The militias, who within their own circles see each other as legitimate, you and I don't see them as legitimate, but they see themselves as legitimate. You've got a Nevada militia that's invaded another state, Oregon State, and they don't think that's legitimate.
Right.
So the other militias are not even supporting them.
So and so when you talk about resolution, then I mean, if you do have to go in and physically take them out, how do you avoid violence at that point?
Well, you make another valid point. It's one thing when a person stands across from me and has a peaceful demand, but he or she's also holding a rifle. Well, that changes the dynamic totally from it being a peaceful demonstration to one that becomes very violent, and they're wanting the federal government to respond violently. They're wanting them to bring guns to the party and go in there and forcibly remove them. They want that confrontation, and the federal government shouldn't give it to them, at least not in the way you and I might think of it for confrontation. Mm-hmm. I think there's ways and tactics they can go on that property. I would imagine they've already had counter intel people already on that property, surveilling that property. Wouldn't surprise me a bit.
Yeah, but if the group wants a confrontation, it sounds like that's what they're going to get at some point. Is it not? Or, I mean, isn't that how it works?
I think yes, sir. I think they will get that but I don't think it'll be the kind they think it's going to be. It's not going to be a head-on confrontation. It's not going to be two parties like we used to see in the Civil War. You got one group on one hill and another group on another hill, and got a fight going on in the middle. No, I think the federal government's a lot smarter than that. They've learned from Ruby Ridge. They've learned from Mount Carmel, and those lessons learned will be applied here by people who know that time is on their side. Yeah.
So what do you throw a bunch of smoke bombs in the building, that kind of thing, and smoke them out? Or?
Yeah. There's a number of tactics that most people don't even know about. They now have malodorous smoke bombs that just smell really terrible. It doesn't hurt anybody, but you can't hardly stand them. So that's another option they could go in. They could cut the electricity, cut the water. They could start jamming their cell phones so they can't communicate with people outside that compound. Yeah. So right now they're being able, they've got the media there, and
that's pretty incredible, huh?
Say what they want.
That they're allowing the media in that area. I thought that was curious.
It is.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure why the federal government would allow that. Is there anything to be gained by that? Or?
Absolutely. This is. You look back in the 1960s in the civil rights era, and we've had from that time to this time, we see that by having this demonstration, the media shows up. You've now given them a forum, and that forum becomes international. Example today, I gave an interview with a station in Montreal. So it's very much an international subject. People are interested in. So now they've got this megaphone being played by the media. So they're absolutely going to play it out as long as they can. And the federal government's got to figure out how to make that work in their advantage. And I assure you, there's some very smart people doing that very thing right now.
So beyond just the Bundys, when you see the government not responding quickly and just doing what it takes to get them out, I mean, does that in itself then lead to people thinking, oh, these guys are soft and we can do this elsewhere? Is that just the nature of how it's going to go? Or?
I agree. That's exactly why you see the Bundys are in Oregon in the first place. It's because they challenged the federal government in Nevada. The federal government backed down, and now they said, wait a minute, hey, it worked here, let's try this. And, the Hammonds do not want them there. They've already said through their lawyer that they do not represent them. They're not representing their best interest. And other militias don't support them. So I think the Bundys are going to find that their support circle is rather small, and that the media, at some point, people are going to just get tired of listening. They're being childish in a lot of ways.
I can't tell. It's hard to tell what the sentiment is. I mean, if things do end up deadly, it's unclear if people are going to blame the government or the Bundys on this one. What do you think?
Yeah, you're right, because everybody likes the underdog. So, especially Americans, we just love to root for the underdog. So even if we think that the Bundys and the militia that are occupying this wildlife preserve are wrong, they don't want to see the government go in there and, manhandle them. I tell people all the time, I've been a cop for over 44 years, and I said, use of force, even legitimate force, is ugly. It's ugly. It never looks good on camera. That doesn't mean it's not legitimate and it's not necessary. It just looks ugly. And you've got cameras all over the place. Not that would change. I think the federal government is aware of how it looked in Ruby Ridge, Mount Carmel, and they're very sensitive to
I'm guessing they'd get the cameras out before they launched any kind of an attack there. Hey, Dr. G.M. Cox, law enforcement expert. Dr. Cox, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.